on a schedule that far exceeds those 30 days. If you, a non-union voice actor, are casted in a role within this game, and this game becomes a union project, then you'd have to constantly get a Taft-Hartley every time they ask you to come back to voice your respective roles, which could span many months in between those periods of times, much more so when you are working on different games from the same publisher. Eventually you, the non-union guy, will use up those Taft-Hartleys, and the biggest issue is you only get 3 of those in your lifetime. There's no way to reset that count unless you literally become a different identity. Once you reach the 3 count threshold, you either join up, or you are most likely forced out of the role by proxy of not being able to be part of that project in the first place. Or you then have to negotiate even further with SAG for other different agreements, and that just sounds like a whole nother headache in the first place, plus maybe it comes with more financial burden. The inclusion of this clause is pointed by a lot of people who describes it as an attempt by SAG-AFTRA to monopolize the way English voice acting is done in any international project that remotely involves the US. If they force Genshin to be a union project, then what would that spell for the non-union VAs who are either unwilling to join up or just simply can't afford to join up? And what sort of legal kerfuffle would it spell in relation to the other dubs that already exist in the game? And what if Hoyo wants to hire English talents outside of the US? And considering their move to side global, this interim agreement just becomes a whole nother headache that I think Hoyo, recording studios, and players are just simply unwilling to deal with, and rightfully so. And to be clear, this whole SAG being difficult thing is nothing new. Sean Chiplock, the big man Diluc voice actor himself, has previously expressed his dissatisfaction with how SAG-AFTRA strong-arms people into becoming a member. SAG pushes extremely hard for people to sign on as full members to the extent of borderline bullying those who start as or switch to FICOR because they're enjoying all the benefits of the membership without actively contributing to their funding. And by the way, what you anti-AI diehards need to understand is that Sean wrote that in correlation to the fact that SAG-AFTRA themselves have a signed contract with an AI company called Ethovox that was updated as recently as October 2024. And while you may argue that this deal is to make sure that VAs get proper credit if they ever consent to using AI, I think it's just a stupid-ass backwards way of doing things, especially when evidently a lot of voice actors in SAG-AFTRA themselves are both unaware of it being a thing and are also very much against this deal being a thing. Because, of course, what's the fucking point of striking for all this AI protection when your union has already provided a method for companies to legally take advantage of potential loopholes within that deal? We've seen these kind of ploys go on from these kind of corporations before. One day, if not completely barred by law itself, they are gonna find a way to turn the deal around on the voice actors. Besides, why have AI involved at all? If they want to build language models, feel free to use normal people. It doesn't need to be someone who can necessarily voice act, no? In stark contrast to Sean, there is also Hoi Dao, who we all know voices Ian Albedo, who tries to explain to people that studios can negotiate SAG's must-join rule, and he mentions that non-union workers can come in via Taft-Hartley anytime they want. But he completely failed to even disclose about how predatory SAG's Taft-Hartley is, and what's even worse was that when he is pressed by other people on Twitter about SAG's terms, he did not say a word. Sure, he is willing to say that this isn't a union versus non-union worker situation. No, it isn't that. To the voice actors, it probably isn't. But to SAG, the requirements of initiation fees and annual dues would probably paint a whole different picture for those willing to read the situation further. Contracts are still the most valid protection they can get against AI, and considering the fact that the other Hoyo connected studios have come out to say that they have extensive AI protection built in their VA contracts, I think the likelihood of Hoyo making use of AI to replace VAs are basically next to none. One, they are actually one of the few companies that I've seen, especially in the gacha space, that have shown extensive care towards their VAs, helping them in every step of the way to the best of their abilities, from solving payment issues to making sure that the bad eggs of their cast are well dealt with. Hoyo has provably shown that they care. Plus, as a China-based company, China has very strict laws when it comes to the use of AI in order to impersonate a person's likeness. And while it may not be that straightforward of a deal in terms of jurisdiction, I highly doubt that Hoyo would ever risk doing anything that could remotely put them within the crosshairs of the CCP. If there was no stupid union mandate, I'm sure Hoyo would have signed that agreement in a heartbeat. Besides, I for one am someone who firmly believes that AI will never ever come close to replicating good voice acting, at least in the next, I don't know, century I guess. Good being the key here, since sure, AI can replicate voices, but at best it is basically mediocre and people can still very much tell in an instant. Good to great voice acting requires great control of one's emotions. Human emotion is still the one thing that computers have not come anywhere close to accurately computing, and unless they have a computer that accounts for literally every single bit of emotion and reactions that over 7 billion people on this earth can display, then it will never reach that level of capability. Anyway, This willful vagueness is where my disappointment with the voice actors started, at least towards the ones that have been so vocal about shitting on a new, innocent, and well-meaning voice actor when those shit talkers haven't exactly been open with what the interim agreement actually entails and are only willing to say half-truths just because it better fits their agenda. Plus how they can't even acknowledge that parties such as Hoyo, recording studios, and others involved have every right to be wary of what this agreement actually constitutes. Or at least, if they do acknowledge it, they have done an absolute piss-poor job of communicating that to us, the players, who are keeping their products and roles alive. It is also fair to say that those union voice actors should have known the risk of taking the job in Genshin. Genshin is a non-union project. It always has been, and it never had any intentions of being unionized the way SAG wanted it to be. And it makes sense considering the varying dubs they have and how wide their scope of work is. They wouldn't want to be bogged down by the union rules of one of their dubs. SAG members are in official capacity prohibited from working in non-union projects. It always has been that way. It's literally their global rule number one. But apparently, SAG has always just kind of looked the other way when their members work on non-union stuff. But now that everything has flipped on its ass and they are trying to enforce their grip over these actors through the AI protection shit, these VAs are scrambling and are looking for someone to blame other than themselves. Who else is there to blame other than the people who hired them in the first place, instead of the union who has been letting things spiral out to begin with? Wouldn't it also be logical to say that the strike should slowly be against SAG instead of with SAG, considering their increasingly monopolizing practices? However, at the end of the day, we know that they can't exactly speak out this way because that might compromise their position in regards to being affiliated with SAG-AFTRA. So they tread around eggshells, and they are also using this AI protection shenanigan to veer away from the major issues that their own union is cooking up. I'm just really further disappointed because of two things. One is that, in part to John's post, these VAs are shifting the blame to Hoyo, their employer, who, let's be honest here, have been insanely generous and patient in their position towards the strike and what it means for one of their star products. They are letting the company who has been so understanding of their position, so accommodating to their troubles, bore all the giant brunt of the criticism, especially when these VAs should know what it means to put Hoyo in the crossfire, whilst absolutely ignoring the notion that they have very valid reasons to stay away from the agreement. The moment the opportunity presented itself to fully throw Hoyo under the bus, these actors took it without reservation, and that I just cannot accept. Thankfully for Hoyo, some of us can still refrain from immediately judging and read the situation further. So they probably knew that with the public interim agreement documents, people can just easily see why they are not signing to begin with. And obviously, number two is that they are using this whole thing as an excuse to bully a new voice actor who's done nothing but take a job that he seems to be well qualified for. It is the hypocrisy of, oh, we are striking to protect our livelihood, but at the sight of someone else from their career path actually trying to maintain their livelihood and taking over a job from someone who hasn't been doing it for months, they immediately put the guy through the stakes and condemn him for all the wrong reasons, even when it's eventually mentioned that the guy didn't know anything about the strike. Jacob is based in Tokyo, so he was far along away from being involved with this whole shit in the first place. He was just a voice actor, taking on a role that is in need of a replacement, and is just trying to get by doing what his career entails him to do. And suddenly, he just gets bullied into oblivion by others who don't even have a full grasp of the situation in the first place? Kaching's VA snidely said, even if you need the money, at least do it uncredited. Like, what? I thought the point of the strike was to also make sure that VAs get proper credit for what they do, and now you're telling someone to remain uncredited when they literally don't have to do that? On the flip side, some people are also trying to hold John accountable for the flack that Jacob is getting, and I say good on that, because in John's post, the part that says, I'd hope that any progress behind the scenes would be made, or that if recast auditions went out, my colleagues wouldn't read for them. Unfortunately, I was wrong. It's definitely a jab intended at whoever was casted to replace him. Well, as it happens, John, the world is a lot wider than just the immediate vicinity of LA, and talents exist far outside of it. You should have known the risk you are taking by standing in solidarity, and that your role is replaceable, and the way you conducted your stance far makes it from being a forever guarantee. This is a whole lot different with how Soldier 11's former VA, Emery Chase, responded to the news of her being recasted. She acknowledges that she was replaced because she held work back and accepted the risk striking as a non-union VA. There was no small jab about having a colleague recasting her and all that, just acknowledgement of her responsibilities, and that's it. However, she, just like Hoi Dao, is also guilty for criminally oversimplifying how Taft-Hartley's truly worked, as shown from a connected tweet from her response thread, which is again somewhat of a microcosm of what many of these English VAs are shown to be saying. I'm not gonna say whether or not they are actually withholding any further information or they just simply don't know, but either option spells a lot of trouble for me. It's just ironic really, in their quest to not get replaced by AI, they seem to have completely forgotten that actual people can still replace them, which in regards to all things is still very much fair game. Yeah, so that's why I'm really disappointed. The VAs involved, you know who you are. The ones who are keeping their silence should keep it that way if they have nothing nice or remotely educational to say. And to Jacob, hold your head high and keep doing what you're doing, man. Best of luck with the work as Kanich, and I personally look forward to seeing what you bring as Kanich. Not that I have a really high bar. I, for one, don't have him, and it's been a long, long while since I even last heard the guy say anything in-game, so his voice has really faded away from me. So I'll have the privilege of being able to listen to Kanich in a fresh new light. Ignore the hate, and know that some sensible folks are still happy to see you come in. Also, it was brought to my attention that Kaylee Mills also tried to defend Moses' former voice actor when all the allegations about him resurfaced, And that's just about another dagger for me, because if these pictures are anything to go by, I heckin' love Kaching, and I genuinely love her work as Kaching. But it just leaves a whole ass sour taste in my mouth knowing that all of this transpired with her being one of the main linchpins. So my conclusion to all of this is basically this. AI users, stay the fuck off of voice acting. Genshin English VAs who are bullying Jacob and making more drama in Hoyo's expense on Twitter, fucking get your shit together. Genshin English VAs who have been silent, please communicate better with the fans. Any of your resources that I find so far entails nothing of what I've learned through this research, and as far as me trying to educate myself, it's been a very, very confusing experience because of how vague everyone is being. And people who are still telling me to watch Jozia's video about this, honestly, just go and eat some balls. I've watched that video multiple times and it helps with nothing. And to SAG-AFTRA, stop being so fucking American. Make a fair and workable solutions with non-union actors. Stop trying to make everyone pay $3 grand in annual fees just to better line your pockets so you can make backstabbing calls against the very people who are literally the backbone of your existence. Okay, that's it. That's the video. I'm just probably gonna go back to wallowing at the fact that my EN voices are gonna remain incomplete for a long ass time. It's depressing that the most surefire way of moving past this is to actually just recast the whole OGVA, especially considering their whole union worker and working non-union shenanigan. It just seems to be the main thing that is giving Hoyo a butt ton of headache. But obviously, this is unrealistic both in terms of game direction, union rules, and contractual work, so we're just gonna have to wait for a different solution. Until the next video, the name's Leafy, and I'll see y'all next time. Sayonara.
Quincy's. Undeterred, Kenpachi, having learned the name of his Zanpakuto, Nozarashi, releases his Shikai, which takes the form of a colossal meat cleaver. With one massive swing, Kenpachi obliterates the meteor, leaving everyone in all of his raw strength, and me questioning, that's a sentence that was actually wrote into existence. Not yet finished, V conjures more than a dozen versions of himself, their combined imaginations creating an imaginary outer space where he intends to trap Kenpachi. Severely injured but unfazed, Kenpachi breaks through the fabricated cosmos and lands a devastating blow on V. Staggered and angered by Kenpachi's resilience, V, however, makes a fatal mistake. He tries to imagine his body as strong as Kenpachi's. However, in doing so, he unintentionally weaponizes his imagination against himself. V's mind, perceiving Kenpachi has an unstoppable force, causing his body to crumble under the weight of its own imagination. As V nears death, his true form is revealed. He has a third one now, I guess. He was merely a brain, his immense power the product of his mind's limitless imagination. Even in his final moments, V is undone by the very strength he sought to match, leaving Kenpachi victorious once more. Kenpachi, severely injured but driven by his instinct to fight, desperately searches for Yachiru, who has mysteriously vanished. His relentless pursuit is interrupted by the sudden arrival of Bombietta's Bastarbine squad, Sternritter T, Sternritter Z, Sternritter P, and Sternritter G. Put that together, you get Tzpg. It's a good team name, just saying. Although Kenpachi initially holds his ground against them, their combined strength soon overwhelms him. Just as Kenpachi is about to fall, a powerful crash rocks the battlefield. Ichigo descends from the heavens, creating a gaping hole that leads to the Soul Palace. With minimal effort, Ichigo throws the 4 Stern Ritters away from Kenpachi, shocking both Soul Reapers and Stern Ritters with his newfound strength. His entrance is both a relief and a warning, as the enemy realizes they are now up against a special war power. Enraged by Ichigo's presence, Candace, Gazelle, Minonis, and Liloda activate their Vollständig forms, determined to bring him down. However, Ichigo's speed and power prove insurmountable. Candace, in particular, unleashes a massive lightning bolt attack, but Ichigo counters with a devastating move. He fuses 2 Getsuga Tensho from his twin Zanpakuto into a new technique, Getsuga Jujisho, effortlessly severing Candace's arm. Before the others can regroup, Gazelle uses her twisted abilities to regenerate Candace's arm from a dead Soul Reaper's tissue. Just as they ready themselves for another strike, Bazb enters the fray, using Burning Finger 1 to shoot down his fellow Stern Ritters. With Bazb now seeking to claim the glory of defeating Ichigo for himself, the battlefield grows even more chaotic. More Stern Ritters soon arrive, surrounding Ichigo 8-1. Yet, Ichigo's focus remains on his ultimate goal, reaching Yhwach, who is now attempting to invade the Soul Palace through the whole created by Ichigo's descent. Unwilling to be held back, Ichigo prepares to fly toward Yhwach, but reinforcements arrive just in time. Renji, Rukia, Byakuya, Shuhei, Yumichika, and Ikkaku step in to confront the remaining Sternritters. As Ichigo flies off to confront Yhwach, he is blindsided by a sudden attack by none other than Uryu. Shocked and confused, Ichigo watches in disbelief as Uryu stands beside Yhwach. Uryu coldly unleashes the Licht Regen and a devastating barrage of spiritual arrows aimed directly at Ichigo. Before the attack can land, however, Chad and Orihime make a dramatic entrance, arriving from Hueco Mundo just in time to block Uryu's onslaught. Standing atop the battlefield, Yhwach, accompanied by Hashwolf and Uryu, begin his ascension toward the Soul Palace. As Ichigo, Chad, and Orihime look on, they are left in awe and dread of the overwhelming power that Yhwach possesses, realizing the monumental challenge that lies ahead. As Yhwach ascends to the Soul Palace, the sheer force of his power blows away everything and everyone in the vicinity. Shunsui, witnessing the cataclysmic event, questions why Ichibei would allow Yhwach to ascend so easily. The atmosphere is tense as Ichigo, momentarily shaken, faces rebuke from both Orihime and Chad for his hesitation in confronting Yhwach. Amidst the chaos, Kisuke arrives with a solution. He leads Ichigo's group to the 12th Division barracks where Mayuri Kurotsuchi had preemptively constructed a one-use replica of the Shiba clan's cannon to shoot them back up to the Soul Palace. However, the cannon requires a tremendous amount of energy to fire. Urahara reveals that Yoruichi and the remaining Vice Red have been collecting reishi from distortions in the human world caused by the Quincy's since their first invasion to fuel the cannon. Meanwhile, Byakuya finds himself surrounded by Candace and 2 other Quincy's. At the same time, Bazbi locks onto Renji and Rukia as they emerge from the rubble. Tetsuzaimon also breaks free from the destruction, having shielded the now wolfish form of Seijin. Amid the carnage, though, Gazelle confronts Ikkaku and Yumichika, attempting to provoke them into attacking so she can zombify and control them. However, Yumichika, in this typical blunt fashion, exposes Gazelle as a male cross-dresser, which enrages Gazelle. In retaliation, Gazelle summons the semi-conscious zombified Bombietta Basterbine. Gazelle, revealing her terrifying ability to zombify and control Soul Reapers with just a drop of her blood, has a little bit of a drawback. For a Quincy to be controlled, they must first be dead. With a cruel grin, Gazelle admits to having personally executed Bombietta to turn her into a controllable zombie. The overwhelming power of Bombietta's explosive abilities leaves Ikkaku and Yumichika struggling on the verge of being zombified themselves. Just when things seem dire, Mayuri, Nemu, and Kurotsuchi arrive on the battlefield, however. Mayuri, always prepared, reveals that he has already created a device to counteract Bombietta's abilities, rendering her useless as a pawn. Not one to be outdone, though, Gazelle responds by summoning an army of zombified Soul Reapers composed mostly of members from Squad 11. The battlefield swarms with reanimated warriors under Gazelle's control, but Mayuri has one more trick up his sleeve. With a gleeful grin, Mayuri unveils his own army of pawns, the resurrected Arankars from Grance's lab. These resurrected Arankars immediately begin tearing through Gazelle's zombified forces with brutal efficiency. In a final, desperate move, Gazelle summons her most formidable pawn, the zombified Hitsugaya. The sight of the once proud captain now under Gazelle's control shocks the Soul Reapers, with Hitsugaya now in the fray. As the battle continues, Mayuri intervenes, deploying a cocktail of drugs to awaken Hitsugaya's cognitive functions and regain control over him. Gazelle summons her remaining zombies to bolster her forces. The tide begins to turn as the others join the fray, but Mayuri's drugs allow him to wrest control from Gazelle, who meets her end impaled by her own creations. Meanwhile, Byakuya demonstrates the power of the Bankai by defeating Candace, Sternritter F, as Minanis and Latota observe. Hisagi unexpectedly turns against Byakuya, manipulated by Sternritter L. L uses his reishi to make everyone with a soul fall in love with him, bringing Hisagi and later Minanis under his influence. L's ability even turns Senbonzakura against Byakuya, making Hisagi wield it against his own captain. Just as Byakuya is cornered, Mayuri and the reanimated Soul Reapers arrive. Kinsei, utilizing his Bankai, manages to dispatch L and knock out Hisagi. L, now desperate, pleads mercy from Liltota, but she consumes him as retribution for his treachery. Feel sorry if you missed this one, but in a post-credits scene, Yuhabaha, Hashwalth, and Uryu make their grand entrance to the Soul Palace. In the annals of ancient history, Ichibei and a young Yuhabaha once sat down to draft a non-aggression treaty. However, Yuhabaha quickly saw through the deception, questioning why the Soul Reapers had enslaved the Soul King, a godly being and Yuhabaha's father, forcing him to divide the realm of infinite life into the world of the living, Quaco Mundo, and the Soul Society. To appease Yuhabaha, Ichibei offered the left arm of the Soul King. Despite this gesture, Yuhabaha chose to erase his father along with the world itself. In the present, Shinjumara Shutora and her holy soldiers engage Yuhabaha, Hashwalth, and Uryu. Despite the holy soldiers' valiant efforts, they are overrun by the Stern Ritter summoned by Hashwalth. However, Nyanzol, a Stern Ritter from Yuhabaha's shadow, arrives to kill the holy soldiers but is swiftly immobilized and eliminated by Shutora. As Nyanzol perishes, Urahara activates the cannon, sending Ichigo, Orihime, Chad, Yoruichi, and Ganju Shiba to the royal palace. Yuhabaha then summons the Stern Ritter Elite Guard and the newly promoted Askin. Lil, wielding his Reishi sniper rifle, shoots Shinjumaru in the head and attempts to destroy what he believes are the Squad Zero members' personal palaces. However, Shinjumaru reveals that they are in a fake soul palace, a trap devised by Hikifune. As Hikifune, Kurenji, and Nimaya enter, Nimaya showcases a failed Zanpakuto called Sayafushi, so sharp and smooth that no sheath could even contain it. Now that's good for cutting bread. The Schutzstaffel launch a coordinated attack on Nimaya, who effortlessly dispatches them all. Using his trump card, Yuhabaha escapes the trap and ascends directly to Ichibei's palace, setting the stage for the final confrontation. In the shattered remnants of the Squad 12 barracks, Kisuke is joined by the remaining alongside Yushiro, Yoruichi's younger brother and head remnants of the Squad 12 barracks, Kisuke is joined by the remaining alongside Yushiro, Yoruichi's younger brother and head of the Shihoin clan. Their mission is to ascend the royal palace. Meanwhile, Gazelle clings to life under the rubble, draining blood from the zombified Bombietta to heal, along with the others who are recovering. In a fierce aerial clash, however, Ichibei confronts Yuhabaha, demonstrating the power of his brush-shaped Zanpakuto. This unique blade doesn't cut physical objects, but instead slashes through names, having the power of anything it touches. When Ichibei cuts Yuhabaha, it halves his strength, forcing Yuhabaha to retreat. Kurenji engages Hashwalth using his Shikai, but despite Hashwalth being cut down, he is soon revived by Yuhabaha's power. Uryu faces off against Shinjumaru on the branches of the royal palace. His attacks, Licht Region, are repelled and returned to him by Shinjumaru, knocking him out cold. In a shocking revelation, Nimaya discovers that Askin has survived thanks to Shrift D, which grants him near immortality by allowing him to calculate the perfect lethal dose of any substance he consumes. By controlling this, Askin induces fatal dosages in those around him. However, Kurenji uses his hot springs to purify Nimaya's poisoned blood, allowing him to overcome Askin and ultimately kill him. As Ichibei moves closer to Yuhabaha, the latter activates Ostvalchen. These words! A terrifying power that strips the remaining Soldaten and Stern Ritters in the Serete, including Bombietta's group and Baz B, of their Reishi and Shrift